Welcome to a new video in my home automation OpenHub and NodeRed series. This time I want to show you a node that I stumbled upon, and it's about natural language processing. If you are building integration with a chat application or speech recognition, processing full sentences is going to be a challenge. If you ever try to code it yourself, you probably know that it's quite difficult. This is why I want to show you Ecolect. Ecolect is a node for NodeRed, and if you don't have it, you can just go to the manage and the palette and just type Ecolect, and then you can install it from the NodeRed editor itself. And at the end, you will get one single node, which is going to be this that I've used in this sample flow. By the way, as usual, the link to this flow is in the video description. So what this flow is going to give you, I'm going to demonstrate it in two examples. One is you want to turn a device, like I want to turn one of my light switches on or off, or I want to know what is the state of my of the light switch. So obviously you can ask it in many different ways. So for example, the turn command can be turn on the Christmas light. I'm just going to use Christmas light as an example. But you might also say that turn the Christmas light on. And these are two different sentences. In one case, it's the device comes first and then the state. In the other case, it's the other way around. I mean, you can code this one, but it's going to be quite difficult. And also, you might not say turn, you might say switch. And if you want to do it even more complicated, for example, turn the garden light off at 6:30, or for example, turn the Christmas light off in 10 minutes, then again it becomes even more difficult for your code to understand. If you're ever going to do something like this, you must, I highly recommend that you use this node. In this node, you can predefine these phrases, the way you would ask certain things, and then you can also define what are the different elements of these phrases. Okay, how my switches are called, how my states are called. And so this node is going to understand the request and then basically break it up into the actual action, or it's usually called in, let's say in Google Actions, it's called the intent. So what you are trying to do, for example, turn or switch lights on and off. What is it that you want to turn on, to what state, to what time, or after how many minutes. And of course, I'm not talking about like turning switches. It's basically any English, technically any sentence you can understand, you can define all these bits that you are interested in, and this node is going to give you. This node doesn't have a complicated neural network or deep learning algorithm behind it. So you actually have to do a lot of the input. You have to define all the different cases yourself. But believe me, that is still a lot more better than trying to build your own recognition logic. So let's see how it works. So I have this sample flow here where on the top I have a couple of inject nodes. I don't want to type so much. So in this inject node, I'm supplying some of these commands in the payload as text, and all this goes into this Ecolect node. I don't want to open it right now. And then the output of this is I have basically putting the message into the debug, so we can see the whole thing which is coming out of the node, but also I'm dissecting that message to the main parts that I'm interested in. And we will see later on how this also works. And here at the bottom, I've also created another additional logic, because anytime this node is not able to understand the command, that it's going to send it out on the last output. So these are all the unrecognized commands, and I'm just collecting them into a list so I can display that. I've also created a very simple UI support for this flow, which you can see here. Is basically it gives you an input where you can enter your test phrase. It's going to show you the different parts of the what's been recognized from this test phase, and also it's keeping a track of the unrecognized commands, which is probably, anyway, it's a nice feature. So if you are building this application for someone else or to a wider community, then I think it's a good idea just to log everything, all the unrecognized commands, so you can fine tune your application later on or fine tune your settings. So let's go into the to Node itself, or the Node configuration. And it is quite a lot, and it looks a little bit complicated at first, but let's just go through it one by one. So the first of all, the Node supports understanding multiple different commands. So in my case, I'm going to have two commands, basically the switch. So that's when I want to switch a device. And also I'm going to have another topic, which is called the query topic. So that's when I want to ask, what's the state of the lamp. So let's deal with the switch topic first. And within the switch topic, you can define the phrases. And so these would be my phrases: turn on the Christmas light, turn the Christmas light on. So I have just replaced the actual state and my device with these curly brackets and an ID, which I'm going to define further up. But here I'm defining all the different ways I can ask this command or this switch, let's say a switch intent. So the basic one is I just want to turn it on and off. I can ask it two different ways, and then maybe what I can also ask is turn the Christmas light on in 10 minutes. So I'm saying a time, like a time lapse, like after how many times or how many minutes, and also I'm saying the time unit, so it can be minutes or hours. And or turn on the Christmas light in 5 minutes or after 5 minutes. Maybe I can also create new ones where it says it's after and not in. And if I'm not specifying, like, after how many times, maybe I can ask the same thing in this way, that turn on the Christmas light at 6 o'clock or 3 p.m. So all the different ways you can think about expressing the same command, you can just type in the phrases. And then the way you define these curly brackets items is actually all the values up here. So first you define your topic and then your values. So I have like a couple of values here. So the first one is my device, and here you list all the different ways you can address a device. And a value, like a name value, can be many different types. So it can be like a text, a boolean, integer, number, and I guess for many cases we are just going to use the enumeration. So these can be like a list of many things. And also what I've noticed, so I said previously a couple of minutes ago that there is not an awful lot of complicated, fuzzy logic behind it. So you literally have to list every single case. So if you say that I want the garden light, you should list as the garden light. Or if you would say that you would only say garden, then you have to create another one, which then only says garden. And then later on in the code, you have to handle that yourself, that the garden light and the simple word garden is actually the same thing. But again, you will figure out yourself, because you will actually see which is being recognized and which is being not recognized by the node. So first I've created these devices, and also created another enumeration, which is the state. So I would either say on and off for the state of the lamp, and also that's the time lapse. So turn on the light after 10 minutes, 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. Again, I'm just listing all these time units as again an enumeration, and the time lapse, which is like the time after 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So the 5, 10 is just a simple integer value. So again, there's no need to set up anything there. And the last one, which is the time, which is the time type, is the last one. So turn on the lights at 1600. And the query and enumeration is going to be fairly similar. Again, it has the same device and the state, and they actually have the same values. And again, the phrases can be, what is the state of the Christmas light? Or is the garden light on? Or tell me the state of the garden light. So these are the different ways I can ask for the status of the lamp. So this node within in the input message, it simply expects a text within the message payload. And then based on how many different topics you define, the node would have the same number of outputs plus one. So the last one is going to be all the unrecognized one, and then it will send out a message on the different nodes based on the different topics. So all the switch messages will come out on the first output. All the query messages are going to come out on the second output. So I just tied them together, and I put them into this dummy, which doesn't really do anything. It just for cosmetic reasons, so I don't have too many lines around. And before I start explaining these things here, let me just run an example. So turn off the Christmas lights. So I inject this one in, and in the output, so here you can see that's the message, the complete message object. Well, first of all, my topic has changed to switch. That's because the node has recognized that I was interested in the switch topic or the switch intent. So the message.topic got updated with the actual topic. The payload remains the same, so these are my original question. But then, now what I also have in addition is that within the message object, I also have a values object which contains all my values that got recognized. So if you remember, I asked for a device. So I said Christmas light, so it recognized Christmas light. And I also asked for off, so it also recognized that Christmas light is the device and the off is the state. And, sorry, wrong query. So the device is the Christmas light, the off is the state. I don't see the time lapse and the time unit and the time because it was not part of this query. But if I do like if I ask a different one, like turn off the Christmas light in 10 minutes. So if I do that, again, I got this message recognized, and it's a switch topic or a switch intent. And if I look at the values now, I again see the Christmas light, I see the off, I see a time unit, which is minutes, and also I see the time lapse, which, I mean, that's how it works. It returns an object which has a value of 10. If I do like turn off the garden light on at 6:30, turn the garden light on at 6:30, then again the message is slightly different. I get a topic, payload, same stuff, and here I also get a device and a state, and the on time is now, as you can see, it has an hour and a minute and a second, and it says precision normal. And which I haven't mentioned before is that for every single one you also get a score, which is, I guess it's more like a confidence score. So for the first two, it says that the node is 100% confident that it managed to identify the switch topic, and in this case it's only 88%. I'm guessing that's because of my number format. So you can play around what kind of number format it recognizes. I mean, I only said 6:30. I don't know why it assumed that it's 6:30 p.m. There was no p.m. here or a.m. Maybe that's the reason it's only 88%. And in order to make the testing of this node a little bit easier, I created all these separate function nodes. And these function nodes, they don't really do anything. They just take the actual value out of the complete message, and they put it into the status, and they also return it, pass it through into these UI nodes. So it's just really for testing, because I can have these inject nodes, I can just test them, and I can immediately see, okay, what is the topic that I recognize, what is the device that got recognized, the state and the time lapse and the time value and the time unit. So, and these are all the things that I have specified in one of the topics here. So all I have done here is I'm checking whether the message has a state, and if it has a state, I put it in. Sorry, if I has a state, then I display it in the node, and I also pass it through. Otherwise, I just display a no value, which you can see in this case. And so you can, if you use this flow, you can use these function nodes to see what is coming out of the Ecolect node, or you can use the same here. So is the planter on? You can see it's the second topic, so the intent is now query, the device is planter, the state is on, and I don't have any other values because well, there is no time lapse, time unit, or time in this one. And as I said, you really have to list all your different cases, because for example, if I mistype the device, so I say planter 2, so planter 2 doesn't exist in the enumeration, so it's going to be unrecognized. As you can see here, I got a list, this unrecognized command added to this list here in the UI. And if I mistype the on, then again that would be unrecognized. But if I leave the word the out, that would be unrecognized as well. And this is why I said it's very important to list all your possible phrases here. So even if you would leave out one of the words, then you need to list it as a different phrase, otherwise it's not going to be recognized. And the same applies for the enumeration as well. So if you can say the Christmas light in two different ways, or sometimes something would be plural or singular, you just have to list them as a separate enumeration. But then again, later on in the code, you need to deal with the thing that they might be actually the same stuff. But again, believe me, this is still making life a lot easier. And the reason I'm doing this separate video on this, first of all, I didn't want to make a really huge video, which I usually do because I like to talk, but I am planning to do a couple of integrations. You can see here the name of the tab is called the Telegram. So I am actually working on a chat integration, and also I have a Google Home, so I want to have Google Home integration with NodeRed. And in both cases, you would have full text messages coming in, and I need to recognize them. And I realized that if I use this Ecolect node, and if I configure this correctly, then it doesn't really matter whether the input is coming from a chat integration or whether it's coming from Google Home. It's going to be just a text which this node needs to understand, and it needs to understand the intent. It needs to be able to dissect the parts of the sentence into, what is the state, what is the device, and again, it can be anything else. So you can build up a whole inventory of sentences and commands that you can ask and you want NodeRed to respond to. That would be my quick introduction of the Ecolect node and natural language processing under NodeRed. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.